Hello. So, I wanted to take time today. Today is July 1st. It's July now. And it's about 12:30 Eastern Time. I wanted to explore July, not only due to the new moon that is occurring, but to the United States having a Pluto return on its birthday, meaning that it's been 248 years approximately since the United States was pretty much declared on July 2nd, 1776. So we, and by we I mean myself, I'm going to, and by going to I mean I already did, it's up on my screen, cast a chart for the 15th of July 2024 at 11:11 Eastern Time for New York. So I'm pretty much getting an idea what's occurring because of this specific date in particular, because I've been watching various individuals, whether you're looking at Jeff Harman, an astrologer, whether you're looking at Joseph P. Anthony as an astrologer, they're name dropping Clif High because they know he's bringing up an emotional value that shows something. And back when I mentioned, I looked into it, that we're having this opposition of Pluto with the Sun and Venus. Pluto's in retrograde. And because this is a Pluto return, we are essentially really almost imagining the birthday of the Pluto return, but we're reflecting on the changes of the birthday that happened. Because specifically, when we have the Sun, which on this date still technically is in Gemini, at the very end of Gemini, based off where the constellation is in the sky. And then not far from it, in the small constellation ahead of it, is Cancer with Venus sitting in it, which will go into there about this week, I believe, later this week, I think the weekend. So Venus in Cancer is all about how are we connecting with the home, with the self, with the feelings, with the field itself, with the way we are in touch to understand the waters of emotion, as well as the comfort of the home, the security of within, the way in which we can calm our waters and give it form, give it, you can call it rest, but it's optimal presence, you could call it. And that would be a good way for Venus to be optimal present when it comes to home, family, even reflection of the past. So maybe connecting with others over the past, or connecting with loved ones, connecting with the way that you are connecting to and valuing these values, like your family, your home life, your locality, the way that you wake up every day. This Venusian energy is very much wanting to dive into these watery realms. And now you have the Sun that is at the very end of Gemini. It's coming through this stage of communication, of expression, of being able to electrify itself, to connect. And it's getting into not only knowing this connection, but now knowing this feeling. So we're tapping into the field, the way we feel it. Sometimes you have your mental connections, but the way you have a feeling, your intuition, your emotion, the way not only what's going on, but what is coming from within. It's not just the current of things without you. You yourself are a component. So the Sun shines as it goes to switching from this mental connection into this watery realm of feeling, of sensing, which brought about this all. Because we could sense from the Taurus, and the Aries is the I am. As we get through these stages of the zodiac, we're now in Cancerian. So now you have the Sun shining. And the thing is, we in July experiencing not only the birthday of the United States, we in July are experiencing the heightened light of this country. We in this time are also experiencing the potential not only for Pluto return, which is the cycle of these 248 years for Pluto to navigate all of the constellations in the sky relative to the Earth, coming back all the way around eventually till it's in the same spot when they sign the Declaration of Independence. Now, even the concept of that declaration, it's just a moment to declare what unraveled from it, what came from it, what led into it. All of that was a part of this movement momentum of happenings. And now Pluto here in this spot, retrograde, is pretty much sitting at the edge of Sagittarius going into Capricorn. Now, these constellations, Sagittarius, occurs right after what we would understand as the galactic center. Now, that's where you get into the Scorpion underworld. But after that, the Sagittarius, just like a sage or the ability to create the way of learning, expanding, understanding the horizon and beyond, that potential, now that we know that there's more, we explore it, we enrich it, we indulge almost in it to expand and discover what it all is. But that's Sagittarius. So this edge of Sagittarius going into Capricorn, you take that knowledge of what you learn, the ability to see and grasp and get an idea of that you will never know by knowing. And then that on its own creates the systems to allow your security to fall into place, to allow things to function, to allow and create systems and structures from what you've learned and gained from these experiences of going through these cycles and changing of experiencing the world. So Pluto at this moment is coming back from navigating these Capricornian, which would be like these government, these systematic, these structural, the bone set, the way these are held together or the way that they've actually been for so long. These are all being reconsidered, reevaluated, because Pluto itself is transformation. Not only are we just taking transformation on through the ability of Pluto, because it's the exchange of the form of the sun's light, the ability of the sun to be through its field comes in through Pluto. So the exchange of something into something else is important, because when we look at Pluto coming in from Capricorn, this Capricornian system, the way that we're actually not only like looking to reconsider, we're reflecting right now on what transformations have brought us to this moment. What transformations have brought us to know what do we let go of? If this is a cycle of rebirth, of it coming back, what is it releasing? What is it learning from, reflecting on? It is one way trying to break its own form, but it's at the same time too trying to understand, learn, so that it can create this new cycle and go on. So when you look at Pluto coming back towards Sag, it wants to reflect and rediscover what it learned, where it was oriented to, what degrees was the horizon set, and was it as accurate as we were led to believe? And that was on an individual basis. So when Pluto is opposing the sun is the light, it's shining, and Venus is the way we're connecting. So if Pluto opposite this, Pluto is challenging our light. It's challenging the way we connect to reflect on transformation, not just in our systems, in our structures, but by the way that we put our faith and learn and discovery to see what potential exists. So when we want to see these grand systems that help us learn, discover, and not only allow us to expand, but to through the act of growing, that alone is giving us the doorway to stepping to new potential. Those are the keys to open up new rooms and new abilities for us to not only put together pieces, but to rediscover areas that we were unable to perceive based off where we were. So we're not only in an act of revisiting through the reflection, but we're in an act of transforming that reflection. Now, when we have the light being challenged by the reflection of transformation, we want to know that in this time, we're feeling this emotional urge, this desire. And when we look at the motion, we look at the moon. And at that time, on July 15th, we have the moon leaving Virgo, going into Libra. This is almost like square, it's post-square to this aspect we were just relating to. But when you look at the moon during this time, it's not going to help the situation. It's going to look at it from a perspective to see these two angles coming from it. It can see what is occurring emotionally. You will see the transformation. And by see, I mean feel. You will feel the transformation being reflected upon, opposing what it will ever go on with this light shining to be, shining to create potential in the way we connect, learn, reflect, and receive. Even the art of creation is this Venusian concept mixed in with the light. Because when you create the sun and when you have Venus together in a chart, you create this artist-like potential, this ability to create, to understand this feminine concept, to transform it to a light that understands beauty, which is why we love the Venusian form of art, which is the beauty of the ability, the beauty of the extent of what is. That art is what it is itself. So the light of that art itself will transform. So the fact that we're transforming and reflecting on the transformations, this opposition might even be in part due to the extent of where we see what people call AI. But if this guise of a concept could be wrapped up to be like concept generator, like even this program, this way we set this program to utilize this information to conduct a function. This ability now brings us to generation using hardware and digits and magnetron like communication, because we want to use hard drives and data and storage to utilize these functions. We use graphic drivers that utilize crystals and utilize heat transformation that needs cooling, needs ways of exerting and transforming this energy it's taking to create all this and do all this. So we're utilizing this software on a hardware that requires for the function. So when you look at something like what is perceived as AI, this function can now challenge the way we communicate by taking in what we previously communicated in its same operatable format, which is like text, digits, internet. And now it can create art. Now, create art is the tricky word. It can create based off the triggering of what's available to it. But is create is the word? No. Create is more just the way that we perceive that it's coming into creation. But the way it is actually coming to is more divinative. It's more coming into play based off its connection. In a way, it is being formed, but how it's being created comes from one, an amalgamation. Two, it is coming from the parameters of the system placed upon it. So this is challenging the idea of art. How can it be art if it can be turned something else? Recently, the community of digital artists, and you can even tap AI into this concept, they recently were able to explore and release what would be understood as Luma. And this is, they call it a dream machine where it can generate and move stuff. Now use stuff like Midjourney to create an image. This is to make the image move. Now you can utilize off software programs, so it's not needing to be on to a network. Like there's obviously like A1111, and then there's also people know it as Comfy, but these ways that we utilize the execution of these programs, these functions, are utilizing the hardware and the data to create it. It's using the transformation. But how are we reflecting on that is like, how has it brought us into something and where is it leading us? But at the same time too, because we have a system in place, We're utilizing this system. We're challenging this system. Can this system be more? Can it be beyond what it is? And at the same time, too, when we look at the moon coming from Virgo into Libra, we want to know, does this feel right? We want to know, does these feelings stay with us for us to understand the transformation that we are being opposed by? Is the transformation coming from within? We meet the transformation through our light. We connect with it. And that's why we're reflecting to make a change. And during this new moon cycle, you have the moon currently opposing essentially what is now Mars, which is leaving from Aries. And then you also have, I believe we have Neptune. Yes, Neptune is actually going retrograde. So not only Neptune retrograde is just occurring earlier in July, but we have Neptune here. We have Uranus over there. So by the time July 15 hits, Mars should have already surpassed Uranus, which means that we're going to have this random act of action, this random act of Mars not only moving ahead from Aries, which is its sign, but moving in the sensual sense of Taurus. So it's not only ability to do, but work with the senses and move around, move the body. So it's definitely conductive. It's conductive in the way that we're transforming the way we function, we move, we direct our compassion. We can have a passion to create art, but because we're doing it through an art of, like, let's say Taurus, this is the Seven Sisters. This is the way we look at the concept of sensory, which is why it's taken in through the senses, through audio, through sight, through the way we express or sniff and taste. It's the way we take it in. And even like the pineal, the way is these senses that we talk to us, they connect to us. And then when Mars is approaching Jupiter, this way to expand is going to be driven. So not only is this act going to continue, but it's going to go beyond all of this. So whatever is going to occur with this feeling opposing this action, this light opposing this transformation, the way we're connecting to it all is the way that even connection itself is being challenged. And I look at certain things like Chiron back here all the way in Pisces, trying to communicate the way that we're wounded by the spiritualness, the way that we have Saturn at the edge of Aquarius, wanting to know what it means to retrograde and understand its own reflection of where it's been through the network, of connecting, of understanding how are we communicating as a collective to solve our problems, to put faith in something, to allow it to carry us. Where do we have the crowd, but where do we have the individual? That's why we have a sun and a moon. We have to have both. So looking at all of this, we see a lot of momentum and potential. Now, my battery is telling me that there's not a lot of charge left, so there's going to have to be a break at some point. If I continue this video or keep it as is, we're going to see and find out. But I want to see what else I can fit into here, because in this moment, I'm looking at the potential for a lot to go off between Mars going towards Jupiter. And this is coming off Uranus, so it's really random. You don't even know what's going to happen. And this is through Taurus. We want to act, move, use senses, see. We want to feel. We're going slow, but it's happening. It's still happening. Luckily, that's helping the whole how much Mars and Jupiter are trying to get through this motion, but it's holding it back, but it's doing it slow and gentle. Not enough to really push it over, but enough to really you can even call it tectonic. So we even move this to the sun. The sun just wants to communicate, it wants to express and electrically connect in its way. And when we're going to the field, the way we can connect and feel that, the emotion, the self, the Venusian connection, we're looking at the way that we want to transform. And the way we feel through the transformation of Cancer, being reflected through the moon, being balanced now, because it entered into Libra. It wants to balance. But with this opposition that it has going into opposing Mars, going into opposing Uranus, we're not sure what's going to happen on the other side of it. To be honest with you, the potential lies in where we are directing that energy. Because once you have Mars in effect, you want to receive in, which is what the light wants to do. But this just wants to come out. This Mars and Uranus just wants to come out. It needs to come out. It needs to find a healthy outlet. You don't suppress that energy. Otherwise, you're going to get it just build up. And that's not good either. That's, like I said, tectonic. So when you're looking at this expansion, this way it's moving, this way it's continuing to go on, there's like so many cycles and just like this Plutonian return, because you got Mercury doing over 200, Venus doing almost 75, Mars 55, 14, 7, 4, 2. These are the ratios of how many cycles are occurring in just one Pluto cycle. So all of this is coming from all of these birthdays coming to play, you can say. These birthdays, these returns, these cycles. And just like that, the battery had to be replaced. But with that, we're back into form, we're back into function, we're back into continuance, even when it's not recording, because that's how we roll. So I was just saying the fractalness of the cycles themselves. They exist because they learn from themselves. They become themselves and more. That's why when we have 9 turning into 10, you have the 1 and the 0, because it's self plus more. And then when you have it self plus more, you can have it self plus more plus the 1, which is why you have 11. So when you look at the way in which we turn, we cycle, we fractal, we continue on. But when we return to a form, like for example, when you have a solar return, your birthday, you are coming back to the same degrees, not only relative to the sun in which we're connected to, but to the degree of the light that is coming in at that time. So we may revisit ways of connecting with things. Now the moon travels in a month, for example, through all the signs. So the moon will reflect some energy in a direction based off something that we were experiencing or communicating with at a certain time. Now that is completing one whole communication cycle. So when a new moon occurs, or when you see the moon return to its home sign, which we all have a home sign for the moon in each of our personalized charts, we can see where we're more emotionally fit based off where our field communicates, how it connects with the world, you could say, how it communicates with light, you can say. So the way that we are forming these cycles, these communication, Pluto's coming back into form of something familiar, post-reflection. It wants to understand itself while being able to conduct this energy. Pluto, which by function is the exchange, the transformation, the way it creates. It gets this idea of the underworld only because of the way that it pulls from it. Now, if we look at the alchemical sense, when it pulls in to it, when you have this sphere here, the sun, with all these planetaries coming in to connect down into the realm we are here presenting, witnessing, reacting in, operating in, and being, we are connected to this. But when it comes in through the Godhead, the source, we are pulling from all these planetaries, not only the feminine, but the masculine. We're pulling from the source, and both of these coming together, all of these coming together, come in and then exchange into this light, into this sun, into the concept of being. Through the sun being the center of the heart, we have these operations of polarities, of expansions, of directions that give us the form, the shape of what we can see as crystalline structure of these forms that we operate through. Even the water that operates and holds the consciousness to construct electrical functions. We are telling our bodies to do what we want to do, say what we want to say, express through the energy of breath itself coming out. We do that. So when we do that well, becoming into ourself well, becoming whole into ourself, becoming to a journey where we become home again, we reach a growth state. So Pluto, this transformation state, reaches a growth state. Now, like I said, we've experienced Mercury going 200 cycles in these bands. Now, Mercury, not only Mercury can go retrograde 3 times a year based off how fact it's close to the sun relative to us. It's the idea that this relative function of Mercury, this mercurial process, this transferring of processing, we are utilizing this way of light transference to see that it moves around so often relative to us, to the central sun, in which we are relating to, that then we see that it's retrograding. It is going in a different direction from us, this point, because of the way it is. Now, in reality, what is happening is it is navigating in a degree that it is aligning with that more only because we are changing our perspective. And when we change our perspective, what is actually retrograde is normalness. It's relative to us that we call it retrograde. It's the RX. It's the way it's R is the direction, but X is the direction this way. So like we're changing it. We're changing the direction. So when you have Saturn in retrograde, you have Pluto in retrograde, Neptune in retrograde. What else is in retrograde? We have all these, all these in retrograde are all sectorized, leaning towards post-galactic center. So that bridge between the galactic center all the way to the Piscean era, we are looking at this connection in the sky that wants not only to reflect on itself, but change its direction so that we can reorient itself when we move forward. And when it comes back to reorient, we've gained something because we've revisited an angle. It's like when you're playing pool and you want to shoot it in, but when you can angle it different ways, you get a sense of depth and direction that helps you understand. And when you're like drawing, when you want to gain perspective and put perspective in, you create these points and you have these lines come out. And then when you create the connections, then through the relativity, it comes into play. But when you want to shift that and change that, and you want to shift the point, it has to come back to know where you're oriented at so that when you realign, that you're able to reconnect. You're able to know why it fits together. And the function of that, the function of how we even transform that is so Plutonian. It's so reflective because it is a transformative reflection. We are not only embodying this message, but we are also carrying it, witnessing it. It's coming through us, through the collective, just as much as we are experiencing happening to us. But it's a two-way street. So our contribution, our honoring of our nature is going to blossom through the crystalline, unique nature. Our light is transmitting and traversing through our nature because of the orientation we were and took through the alignment, you can say, of constructs and structure and breath and light that is all important for all of these. Now, if you look at the layers of a fractal, each age we grow. When we reach certain magnitudes, for example, when you reach almost into your 30s, you get a Saturn return. So you reach a full return of so many solar cycles in relative to Saturn returning.
It's happening.
Yeah, that's like a Saturn return right there. So Saturn returning with its big ass black truck and its trailer and everything, trying to structure and move everything. And it's like really shaking things up. So we look at this as a cycle that challenges Sun and Saturn because you see Saturn as this darkness, this way that operates in a parallel to the moon to hold us, to keep us form and structure. And then we see it come full circle. We are met with that one birthing pain that brings us back, that brings us to the birthing pain we once had. So it's relative to what is actually happening back when, I guess like America was like declared. Even the Declaration of the Independence is still just a stepping stone for everything that laid itself out. And even if you look at now, the hands were in the people, competent people. When you look at people who are like a president, you are looking at the word resonant with a P on it. It's the extent that comes out of that. It's a role now because we've taken it and we've made it into a Scooby-Doo frame that we put eyes behind that we can see and look at, and they're looking at us. Now, we don't want that because you see a perception, but it's not what's really behind the mask. It's not behind the painting. It's not behind the orchestra. It's not the Scooby-Doo event. It's the means behind the Scooby-Doo event, which always gets revealed at the end. Now, through this whole mystery incorporated, we're here understanding the mysteries of Pluto. Because of how all of this comes together, we have to reflect to understand not only why do the symbols come in, but why do they communicate? Not only did we just have Mercury just travel through this sector, but now that's moving on ahead of us. Now let's see if there's anything going on. So we see almost this hard aspect of Mercury to Mars and Uranus. Now, if I look at this and I think like a hard aspect of how we communicate to our actions, that means sometimes our actions and the way we want to express ourselves and process might not meet evenly. Sometimes they might have to conflict. Sometimes they each want something different. When you have two children and one wants to do this and one wants to do that, you need to find a way to creatively meet both if you have to manage both at the same time. So you, on one hand, either have to dedicate yourself to one each or find a way to bring them together. But you are the union point. That's what a square is. That's why we have a square, because it's a union point where you have to work with two energies going on. So when you see this square of like this harder aspect of this Mercury, and then you also have, like I said, the moon is opposing this sector too. So we have this inability to not only have this square structure of, you can say the way we're suddenly reacting and acting, you can say the way that we're processing and expressing the way we're seeing the world and sensing the world. And then you can even say the way that we're feeling, we want to feel like we want to bring balance. And if something's not right, we're going to probably like react on the dime to change something about that. I mean, there's probably an expectancy about all that happening too. And then in this time, we're having information come out. We're having a reflection of all these things that could bring change, bring great change, not only for like the recycling, the fractaling of what brought the Declaration of Independence to be, but what brought this nation here, this concept of freedom, this concept of God-given rights, these concepts of knowing that we're here, present in our bodies. Who governs that? And do we actually offer that governance? No. We are the ones that govern our own bodies. We are the ones that always entitle us. Our understanding of the language has to be revisited, because then we can process the way to communicate, and then we can meet so that we can communicate feelings. And then once we have a understanding of same page, we can enact actions, and actions can then make changes. Now, you spark this off in the wrong way. Obviously, chords get, tangled. And it doesn't always work out in everyone's favor, but to be aware of and understanding your nature of who you are is the same reason why you got to understand that intuition is a matter of trusting of yourself, becoming right in reflection over time. It is not an idea that you have this ability to know what is accurate. It's the reflection that gives us the accuracy to know where we were right. We need to reflect to understand just as much what we're capable of seeing with the light, to know that we have a contrast, can see where we can not only do better, but it's the idea that if the moon, even in this sector, wants to feel, it's going to feel that it wants to make sure that what it's feeling is true. It wants to make sure that if it's going to carry these feelings forward, they want it to be something that's going to continue to help it, like a good harvest. You take away what was unable to process itself to become whole and full, so that you can keep what's whole and full to continue onward. We continue onward because it's the idea of what the O is, the sun, the O itself, the wholeness, the field, the one, the O. It's always going to be, and that's something that we're witnessing rebirth itself almost, not only in the way that we're expressing ourselves, especially leading into this 15th. Because right now we're in the early of July, the 1st, and now we're seeing Mercury in this moment, right now, communicating in this exact thing, I believe. Later this week, we're seeing Mercury oppose this Plutonian concept. So the way that we're communicating right now in this moment is a lead up to what's going on to the 15th on the sense of the central soul, the sun itself. It is the heart. It's the field, the space itself holding the field. The center, the soul, the magnification of the centralness of energy of your being. So it needs to balance. It needs to come through, and then that's your center. It needs to be able to come both ways, in which why we're connected. It's the idea of a soul is a transference. So when the sun is coming through, it's a transference of the light. So the light itself comes through the transference. When we have soul, it's through the parameter. When we have sun, it's the continuance onward. When we have sun with the U, it's coming from it, continuing in. So it's all the same language, to take apart what we're seeing and understanding, but the functions and how we do that, that's, like I said, that's all artist symbolism stuff. Now, I could probably break down like United States and all this stuff, the Declaration of Independence, but I think the concept would take away looking at the symbols as something that happened versus the motivations of what brought it to happen, which is then cycling now to become something new, something expanded and more. We could understand what happened then. Like, for example, will it repeat itself? No, it can't be an exact moment of events, because even then, where everything was, how it was different based off the circumstances. Now, the circumstances are different, but energies are still present for us to encounter and unravel not only the mysteries of the world, but the incorporatedness of how it all comes together to be solved so that we can see it all. Now, I'm not seeing too many big things that tell me like something massive is going to happen. I can pull cards and like maybe like divinate something extra to get an insight, but I'm not here to like give a forecast. Like, forecasting is like, all right, you can say like a potential, a concept here. I can look at what I'm interpreting, but like, why do we like dress it up into like a weather forecast? Why can't we just like honestly utilize it as an interpretation of how I'm seeing the data based off my experiences and knowledge and my position of being able to perceive not only this data, but to do the work to not only have an experience that allows me to communicate the data, but to understand and then express it out clearly. Now, whether that is seen and communicated and receptive of is a whole different ballpark, because one of us connects, but the other of us receives. So every individual navigates this. So like this whole deconstruction of like transformation happens different for everyone. Everyone has these constellations placed in their chart based off where they were. And you can see relative to you. So everyone will be going through this in their own way. And some people who have signs that are intersecting all these things on it, the over the sun, expansion, you're going to get that. Over the Pluto, reflection, you're going to get this inverted transformation. You're going to see these ways in which we're like pulling away from transformation, but at the same time, pulling away from it in the sector of what you would understand as like this Capricornian, early Capricornian. So this Capricornian is when you see the highs and the lows. It's the why you want to see the potential of what is, you know, the horizon from Sagittarius. Capricorn takes you there so that then Aquarius can connect it and then Pisces can love it. Because once you have it and it's all existing, then it all becomes something else altogether. So this sector is reflecting a lot. It's like the way we're reoriented to a lot of these planetaries that are over in this sector. This energy is being highly reflected upon. And not only the way that we're structuring things, but the way that we have an idealism and the way that we even dream and see the way in which we're even like connected on a psychic sense. This is all being reinterpreted and transformed, and even the transformation is being transformed and reflected on. So we are definitely in a state where after probably all of this, like I don't even know what all of this is, but let's say through to 24 to 25, through these moments, we're in an eclipse season right now. So like we're in a cycle which is going to come off again this fall, this autumn, this way in which the sun then has to pull its light away from this area of this being in terms of being able to also nurture elsewhere. So it's just cyclic light traveling. So the way in which we're like looking at it, it's another year. The way that we're seeing things happen have a potential to also spark off people, because anybody who takes this information and utilizes it, like you can, like people utilize information to market, to direct people because they want to control. I don't like that. I do this because I think I want to have a perspective to show you what's going on. And it's not about showing the magic trick. It's about having the conversation with the right language so that we can actually take this and, you know, move not only the discussion forward, but let's like get the concept away from where we invest the energy to subtract from this, and let's multiply it. Let's add it. Let's keep it going. Let's show that this can continue on. Let's show that this has enough light to carry on into itself in an honest manner, in an expressionist manner. We have to have a conversation. But that conversation does not have to be had in a moment of direction. Time doesn't work like that. The way in which we communicate can be a message from universe happening in the spot. Could happen from a video in which we receive something, a podcast, a way something said, a message, could be anything really. It can revisit you. It can come back to you, but it can actually communicate with you there on the spot for you to have a conversation with yourself. At the end of the day, you want the best conversation with yourself to be that you trust yourself, you know yourself, you love yourself, you embrace yourself. You know yourself enough. You don't have to worry what comes at you because it's always going to come at you. It's, do you know yourself enough to know who you are through all the challenges, through all that is, through all that may disarray you, distract you, and take you off your path? After all that is said and done, are you willing to come back to who you are? Are you willing to take the actions? Or are you more willing to let yourself be directed and moved based off the currents of what others and algorithms and systems are trying to place upon you? Or do you opt out? Do you choose a direction for yourself? Do you choose to take action that is more aligned with who you are, that even with your emotions not able to see eye to eye, do you take a way to communicate and connect to meet your light? But I think we're not always going to have answers. I don't think we're all going to even have what we want at this point. I think right now, based off this chart, we have oppositions. Oppositions give us the ability to choose. I have oppositions in my chart, but they bring balance. They bring Mars opposing Venus. These forces, these magnetisms are ways in which they're polarities. So when they oppose one another, they can stabilize something in the center. So when you have an opposition, you have these energies that are willing to have something in the center. Question is, what do you want there? That's up to you. That's why now of all times, when Pluto's ability to come in at this time increases based off the potential of light present at this time. And because the way that we're perceiving it, Pluto is moving away. So where we are and where Pluto is, we could potentially be letting in more change in this time through the light of our who we are. We may be meeting the change of non-light light with light itself to give it light so that we can bring into something new. And that's why you have Aries. You have these two forces coming together to continue on. It's a whole new cycle. So when we're seeing these cycles, a nation of cycles, a place that I am, a place that I see, a place that I can connect to based off the energies and resonances, a place where I can communicate based off my experiences, a place that puts me in a position based off not only the knowledge, but the perception to lead up to find the right resources, to read and encounter the right experiences and responses and build up, to not only give me something to build off of, but to have an understanding within myself, not to regurgitate, but to create my own, cuisine, this whole dish of being able to express not only what I perceive, but the way in which we are trying to understand and have a conversation that adapts itself to something beyond, something that is like more than just the conversation itself. Even me right now, in this moment, this is not what it's about, but it's what is. So what is beyond it, that's what I'm wanting to do. That's the seed I'm planting by taking these actions to communicate the mercurial opposition to the Plutonian transformation. I'm meeting it through these energies by expressing it through my mercurial dominance, which I have a stellium of 4 planetaries operating so that I can not only do it structurally, but to a degree that puts it out there, connects that one-on-one information to be communicated, not only structurally, but in a manner that shapes it to be like this ideal on the spot, but like impromptu-ness, this jazzness, this way of it coming out, this expressionist. I trust that because I've seen it. And I was encountering an audio for Walter Russell where one of his chapters say that art is the very nature. Great art is the nature of being able to work with nature, God, one, all of it, universe. It is there step by step. It is with you step by step. This process is universe, nature, step by step. Regardless, it is unfolding. It doesn't need to be structured. I don't need to think about it. It's not a breath, but at the same time, too, it's a dance. The rhythm is you. You are the rhythm. You come into a rhythm through your birthlight. Your birthlight is the rhythm communicating to these spheres, these ways that are constructed by the field of the sun through the oppositions of the field and where they're oriented at the time based off the position and each one in that moment of the now relative to us. If that makes sense. It's good to have a visual. I'm Italian, so like me working with the hands, it's needed. Like you have the sun, then you have essentially like various layers so that you can communicate the different concepts. So here would be the moon, here would be Saturn, here would be Mercury, here would be Jupiter, here would be Venus, here would be Mars, here would be the sun. So now you have these layers, and where they are oriented is based off where that rhythm of the pulse of the sun is actually occurring. So we are the currents of that. You look at like a comet tail, and you look like where we're coming out of. We have to be the sun, to be the light, to be the earth, to be the us, to be here, to be the I. Because it all is what it is, but how we come through the I is the essence of the nature we have to work with through the imprint of the angles in which we're reflecting. So we have the conscious to perceive, both ways, con. But we, as ourselves, know like we come down into it. We embody it. And embodying ourselves is we can be distracted just as much as we can be true. And being true is a constant orientation to what is. That really is the idea of truth. People think it's subjective, but really, what is subjectiveness? But if changing stars are always changing, the way we navigate those stars are true. Why? Because it's not the essence of what we perceive as true. It's the orientation of always reorienting to be true. So with that, I mean, like, I could really wrap this up. We're not going too deep into it. I feel like this is like surface level because, like, I don't need a prediction. I don't need an event. I don't need this. I don't need to pull a Clif High drop besides the reflection of the names because, like, I followed Clif High for over a decade now. So it's not like a big ordeal. It's just like the concept of knowing where the sources are accurate. The sources are true. The sources of the universe itself. Those who are in truth to know themselves and to be themselves so true to create what they're in the positions to be and express into the world, and those are connected to it, those are the ones guided by source itself to arrive where you want to know, arrive where you want to see truth. And the orientation of always reorienting towards the proper truth, the proper alignment, the proper way in which we're navigating to arrive at our destination, that is going to be an individual. But like, just like every boat, we use the same system, the stars, the light. The light comes to be to give us the light, the ability to see, that gives us the language, the ability to change, to reflect and appear in different forms of light and receptive to the light we have coming in. It's light meeting light. And then that's why we have a unique light, because it's like a flavor of light, you can say. So we're always the sun, but what flavors are present and what angles of that sun relative to its function is providing us the construct in which the memory of our breath is relative to. So yes. So with all that said and done, I think this is a lot of good information. I think this is going to be something good. Normally, I like to have a discussion. Normally, I do it on a small little press the button. Ooh, look at me talking to a recorder. Because it's easier. But I'm doing a video now, and because the battery died, I'm going to have to stitch these together. And I see right now, I'm maximize videos are here. I can't go past 30 minutes. And this one's at 28:22. And I say that because this is the second video that I had to do after changing the battery. So with that, I want to say that this is probably episodic almost. I might be able to do this as a podcast episode. I don't know yet. But I just want to put this out there because this is just something I'm curious about, to express, to understand. I had these questions, so I asked them. So I wanted to know, and I hope these answers contribute to something that's larger than myself. That's the least I can say at this night. So let's see. Anything that I can help from here? I guess with the planetaries, for example, when we have the sun, I don't want to get into that right now, but yeah, I got less than a minute. Who am I to think that I'm going to dive into deep dives? So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for actually taking a moment to actually listen to all this. Yeah, you can totally leave comments below. That's something I guess people do. I'm not really like promoting on you subscribing, but like you can do that too. Like it's your free will. If there's anything here that I've learned is just the fact that like honor free will, honor the fact that you're like a God-given right. You're here because you know what? Universe brought you here. The sun brought you here. You're here. So like stop letting people control you. Stop letting things happen to you. And you know, it's your life. It's how you want to do it. So do it. Simply. I think that's the best way we can just do it. And I think that's like Uranus on Mars on a nutshell. And because there are feelings are opposed to it, we got to feel. We got to like meet that halfway. We got to know that this field is going to go in the right direction. We want to know that we're oriented towards something that means something to us, that lights us up, that brings us to become our best self. So stay true. I figured I'd proper ending it. You know, like it's my Mars in 12th house. Leave me alone, dude. Like not everyone has the perfect goodbye. So like deal with it. Anyway, so yeah, stay true always. I think that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I think that's what I said. So I said it. It just got cut off. So yeah, I don't want to say too much else. So yeah, this is your goodbye. Anyway, I'm going to be releasing more stuff. I just did like a whole month of stuff. I've been recording. I'm so behind on video editing. I'm so behind on getting a lot of stuff out there. The last podcast I think I released were like, okay, so every single podcast I put up to this point, July 1st, has been recorded in May. So like June's been busy. I'm hoping to release a lot more soon, and I have a lot more going on, and I'm working a lot behind the scenes. And I don't know, I'm not here to do a studio update, but hey man, life is happening. I'm just telling you, I'm busy on my homestead. I'm busy in my career. I'm busy also healing my body and doing all the things that, you know, I'm here to do in my life. So thank you for, you know, engaging in some of the time that I put into a video format that actually digitalizes itself and then traverses the interwebs to arrive into a format that your computer then transforms into information that you can perceive through the awareness of a hardware that is like, you know, like in front of you, so that you can receive this information, whether it's through your senses, through the eyes of what you perceive, or even the way that like, you know, you're thinking, your mental sense of like, what the fuck? Like either way you're doing it. So with that said, I said that was said. And that's how we said, I said. And with that, thank you. Yeah, seriously, thank you. I'm like, you know, here, present, life. So with that, thank you for being. Stay true. And as always, you know, do something to give yourself a garden. Do something to build a community. Do something to help yourself orient to the alignment that is going to help you locally. To find yourself locally means to find yourself from the inside out. To build yourself from the inside out. To build yourself to be the best person you can be, always will be, and or have the potential to be if you allow it to be. It's not always easy, and it's not always easy to come back, especially when we find ourselves in deeper valleys than we don't ever expect to find ourselves in. So with that, find the courage, because universe embraces courage. Universe is the light of courage. So if you can find that courage, you will be taken to find the opportunity to at least be guided on the path back to where you want to be. Not only to where you belong, but where you are always. Through not only who you are, but through the extension of what you bring into the space around you. Through those around you, through the family, through the unit, through the action and the art. Be who you truly are meant to be. And that's the best as I can always say. Because you know who you are more than anyone else, and you don't need anyone else telling you who you are. This is more just a reminder. So thank you. So stay true.